back to where you were approximately.
Let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, I just shipped over. Was on shipping leave, re-enlistment leave when Pearl Harbor was hit. You know, when I was reassigned from the receiving ship in New York, had orders to the pre-commissioning detail for the USS Juno, which was being built over in federal shipyards in Crane, New Jersey. We got space in one of the warehouses in Brooklyn where we stored all of our equipment, stuff that was going to go aboard, and went in commission in Valentine's Day of '42. And eventually wound up down in the South Pacific, and Battle of Santa Cruz, and numerous others, too frequent to mention. But anyhow, the interesting part of the story is on the night of November the 12th, there was a Japanese task force coming down to Guadalcanal. And you've got 3 or 4 islands there. You got, well, what they call Iron Bottom Sound is between Guadalcanal and Florida Island, and I think Talagi is the other island. But this Jap force was coming down in 2 columns, and we left Noumea the day before to meet them. And we went, this was at night, 7 o'clock. We went up between them, 13 ships in our force. I don't know how many was in there, but there was a ton of them anyway. And the officer in charge, the captain on the San Francisco, or captain on the San Francisco, told us when he was going up between them, he says there's odd numbers to the right, even numbers to the left. So every ship in line, whether it was even or odd, whichever when they told us to go, that's where they shot. Frankly, I think we did as much damage to our own ships as we did to them, on some of them. But shortly after we got into the battle, the Juno took a torpedo. So the skipper of the torpedo, he turned around and got out of there, got out of the way, let it float to sea. And the following morning, when the other ships, when the task force caught up with us, the San Francisco had many, many shell holes in it. And on top of that, they'd had a Japanese plane that crashed into their hangar deck, or their hangar, the day before, so they had casualties from that. And of course the casualties they sustained during the night action. So they sent a message over to the Juno that she needed medical assistance and could they help. So the junior medical officer, 2 other pharmacist mates and myself, went over to San Francisco. And while we were there, the Juno was hit with a second torpedo from a submarine and sank, blew up. And when the smoke cleared, you didn't see a thing on the water. But there was approximately 140 men that were blown into the water. And of course, with the officer in charge on the San Francisco, he was killed during the night action. So the senior officer present was the skipper of the Hoover. I mean, his name was Hoover. He was the skipper of the Helena. And he wouldn't break radio silence, and he wouldn't send the destroyer back to look for anything. He would just keep going. So eventually, there were 10 survivors, other than the 4 that were on the San Francisco. They were in the water for a week before they finally found them. When the task force got to Noumea, why Halsey was looking at the ship's present report, and he wanted to know where the Juno was, and they told him that she'd sunk, and he wanted to know where the survivors were. He said, we didn't look for them. So that's when they started in earnest looking for the survivors, and they found 10 of them. However, 3 of these 10 had made it to an island where the natives had got in contact with the Navy, and they'd been picked up. So that left 7 of them still in the water. And they were rescued by PBY, a flying boat. And against all regulations, against landing in the ocean, they landed and picked them up. And from then, it's ancient history. If the Juno had stayed afloat another day, it would have been 9 months old. I've been to, we had a 50-year reunion in '92, back in Waterloo, Iowa, where the Sullivan boys were from, and there were 5 of them. All of them were lost.
Those 5 Sullivan boys, the girls I'm not sure
They
if you're
made
familiar
movies,
with.
the Sullivans. They've had 2 destroyers named after them. One of them is a museum ship back in Buffalo, New York, and the other one, I guess, is in the scrapyard.
The 5 Sullivan brothers were all on the Juno, right?
Yeah. We had 4 brothers on there also, a quartet. They were good boxers. But to keep from all 4 of them being lost at once, like the Sullivans were, before we left Noumea to go up the slot, 2 of them transferred off. But the 2 that stayed on the Juno, they were lost too. Any questions?
We have a couple of more. What was your reaction to Franklin Roosevelt's leadership and to Truman's?
Roosevelt and Truman, I thought they were good leaders. I was for them 100%.
Okay. And then, were you aware of the internment of Japanese Americans? If so, what was your reaction, and did you feel it was justified?
At the beginning, yes. But as it wore on, they really, a lot of them enlisted and served their country well. And, well, it's just like the Navajo Indians. They had this special language of theirs. It was really Indian language, but the Japanese never did break the code on them. So they were a big help in, on the islands, particularly. Because they could communicate, and the Japanese wouldn't know what the hell they were talking about. Pardon my French.
It's okay. What was your reaction to the German atrocities towards the Jews?
Well, the normal reaction. It shouldn't happen, but it did. Just like the Japanese were just as bad on on their prisoners as the Germans were on ours.
Did you ever see any of the camps or any of like the
No.
prisoner of war camps?
No.
No? And then, what was your reaction to Truman's decision to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Well, of course, at the time I didn't know anything about it. But in hindsight, I think he did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Saved a lot of boys.
And then last question, at the end of the war, did you anticipate future wars, or did it seem to you that countries